They dragged her as if she were a petty thief. Her high heels screeched across the marble floor, the sharp sound echoing beneath the crystal chandeliers. Nyla Carter, 38 years old, kept her back straight. No struggling, no pleading. Her face was like a midnight lake, so still that the silence itself sent chills through the crowd, filming with their phones. The mass of people parted in the grand lobby of the Beverly Crest Grand. The bronze plaque, etched with Carter Hospitality Group, reflected the lights, gleaming, mocking. A narration rose inside the minds of the viewers. Sometimes real power does not need to shout. It simply waits, still, for the moment to be unleashed. She arrived at 10:47. A navy blue suit framed her slender figure with crisp lines, a steel watch with a pale blue face resting on her wrist. She did not look like someone about to be humiliated, but first glances are never fair. The reception desk gleamed. Emily Shaw, 24, with softly curled blonde hair and a brand-new name tag, lifted her eyes halfway, then lowered them again, as if she had already seen enough to judge. "Ma'am, this is a 5-star hotel," Emily said sweetly, her voice coated with a thin layer of sugar over metal. "The cheapest room starts at $800 a night." "Are you sure you are in the right place?" A small knife slipped between polite smiles. Nyla placed a titanium card on the stone counter with a heavy click. "I have a reservation. Carter. Nyla Carter." Her lips moved barely, her tone so calm the live stream cameras zoomed closer just to catch the sound. Emily did not touch the card. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, eyes skimming Nyla's suit like a blade. Hesitation curdled into disdain. Perhaps another place would be better suited. How about the Holiday Inn down the street? A corner of her mouth lifted. At 24, Emily thought she understood the world. Wealth had a scent, power had a color. The first phone stream went live. Numbers climbed. 147, 289, 502. Thomas Reed, 43, assistant manager, appeared like a shadow. Salt and pepper hair, grey-striped tie, the gait of someone used to putting out fires in the lobby. He listened to Emily's brief report, eyes fixed on Nyla. 3 thoughts flashed through his head. Disruptive guest, media risk, brand policy. And an old prejudice surfaced like an oil stain. Never let anyone ruin the atmosphere of the elite. "Ma'am," Thomas said hoarsely, "please step away from the reception. We cannot allow this to affect our other guests' experience." Nyla unclasped her leather case. A stack of documents caught the light with embossed corporate seals. She did not fling the evidence in anyone's face. She only revealed it slightly, just enough for the keen-eyed to sense the weight of its worth. "I expect we handle this professionally," she said, pulling out a small leather notebook with her other hand. Her handwriting cut across the page like a blade, short, straight, unwavering. 10:49. Reception refused card. Implied financial incapacity. Witnesses, recordings present. From the mezzanine balcony, a middle-aged couple paused. The wife tugged her husband's sleeve. "Look, they're streaming live." He frowned, wary of trouble, but his eyes stayed locked on the woman being forced back. There was something about her composure that unsettled him, the calm of someone accustomed to making major decisions, not a lost guest. The viewer count kept climbing. 847-1-200, 1,247. Hashtag hotel discrimination flickered under the live feed. "Fake cards are everywhere," Thomas snapped, signaling. 2 guards approached from opposite sides like closing doors. Mick, broad-shouldered in black with a stony face, and Raffi, younger, his eyes showing unease. Phones rose like a forest of antennas. The air was thick with expensive perfume, laced with the metallic tang of tension. "This is your final warning." Thomas lowered his voice as if discreet, but loud enough for the crowd. "Leave, or we will call the police for trespassing." Nyla raised her eyes to the bronze plaque on the wall. A name could be carved in stone, but a system lived in how people treated one another. In the slim earpiece hidden beneath her black hair, Vivian's voice whispered like a pinprick. "Helipad is ready, Nyla. Pilot says the weather window closes at noon." Nyla touched her ear and cut the line. A small gesture, but Thomas noticed. He smirked. "A helicopter? How amusing." Nyla closed her case. "Then let us do this by the book," she murmured, more to herself than to them. The words were loud enough for microphones to catch. A shiver ran through those nearest. By the book sounded like the beginning of a ritual already rehearsed. Emily's view. At 1/2 meter's distance, she saw Nyla's hands. Clean, no nail polish, no rings, no jewelry. She remembered reading on a trivial blog, "Real wealth never flaunts." Emily had never believed it. She trusted branded luggage, Hermes bags, the show of status. What unsettled her now was not the suit, but the gaze of someone who could wait and still win. Rafi's view. He remembered his first security training. Avoid physical contact, use words first, prevent escalation. But orders were orders, and cameras were rolling. He had seen careers end over a single wrong grip. Sweat dampened his palm inside the glove. "What is going on here?" A sharp female voice cut from the VIP elevator. The crowd split. Veronica Hale, 52, general manager, entered like a chrome blade. Silver hair in a tight bun, black suit, a glittering brooch. Her eyes flicked to 3 points. Guest, cameras, staff. "The situation is exaggerated," Veronica declared before anyone explained, her tone that of someone used to diffusing crises with words, not listening. "Our standards must be preserved." That word, standards, fell like a cold coin onto the floor. And often people forget to ask, standards for what and for whom? "What standards?" Nyla asked softly. She did not smile. "Be specific, so your staff won't lose their way." Her eyes met the lenses, as if speaking to thousands beyond the room, not just to Veronica. Veronica hesitated. 30 years in grand lobbies had taught her which people collapse, which explode, which break. The woman before her was unnervingly silent, not easily categorized. Ability to pay, appropriate conduct, Veronica chose carefully. Nyla placed an Amex Centurion on the desk. The metallic clang echoed under the crystal ceiling. Gasps rippled. Emily glanced at it, stiffly forcing a blank face. Fake cards are very convincing now. A few guests laughed dryly, her remark exposing more naivety than caution. The viewer count surged. 25,000. The hashtag spilled beyond the city. A news van flashed past the window. Dana Kim, 31, reporter, raised her camera and pushed through the crowd. "This is Dana Kim, Channel 7 News, live from the Beverly Crest Grand Lobby." Thomas swallowed hard. Memories stung. 3 prior complaints, 2 internal reviews, 1 formal warning. He had thought he could climb out of paperwork into a deputy manager seat elsewhere, but some camera had just caught him at his worst angle, towering over a silent woman. Nyla tilted her head, writing another line. 11:02, news arrived. GM invoked standards. Centurion card deemed fake. Witnesses increasing. Her breathing steady, her pulse unchanged. The biggest decisions of her life, the March acquisition, the April restructuring, had been made in such stillness. From the mezzanine, a bespectacled man leaned on the railing. "Doctor," Leonard Brooks, 54 civil rights attorney, narrowed his eyes. In her phrasing, he recognized something he sought in court: a legal spine. This woman was not angry. She was building a case. "Security," Veronica ordered, her voice tight. "Escort this guest out. If not, call the police." Silence spread suddenly. Phones leaned closer instinctively. Everyone waited for the explosion. The louder the better, for closure. Nyla locked eyes with Thomas. "Some lessons," she whispered, "can only be learned through pain once." Rafi shivered. It was not a threat. It sounded like a statement of fact. "Enough!" Thomas jerked his chin. Mick stepped forward, hand half outstretched. At that moment, something small happened, almost unnoticed. Nyla picked up a fountain pen from her case, snapped it open. A cobalt glint flashed. She wrote one final line, then raised her head, speaking loud enough for cameras. "I ask everyone nearby to confirm this. I presented valid identification, valid payment, and was still denied service. Thank you." Her words were precise, no exclamations. They sounded like a passage from a legal affidavit. Veronica's spine chilled half a degree. She was used to anger. It was easier to handle. Apologize, upgrade, offer vouchers. But this left no grip. It pierced straight through the shield of standards she had thrown up. On Dana's screen, comments erupted. "She knows what she's doing. Don't touch her. This is the opening of a lawsuit." Nyla capped her pen with a faint click. She wrapped herself in composure like a cloak. For a fleeting second, a shadow crossed her eyes. Memory of a closed door night. Signatures, red seals. She inhaled, held it a moment longer. Then she did what no one expected. She smiled, very faintly, enough for her alone to hear the peace in her chest. "Very well," Nyla said slowly. "If you insist, then we will follow procedure." She lifted her case, adjusted her sleeve. Mick's hand froze in mid-air. Rafi eased his stance. Emily swallowed. Thomas stiffened. Veronica gripped the railing, and the plot twist slid into the lobby like a blade of air. Nyla tilted her chin, letting the cameras catch the embossed CHG on the cobalt pen. Someone in the crowd gasped. Carter Hospitality. Comments lit up like a string of bulbs. "That's a contract pen. What is CHG? It can't be just coincidence." Nyla gave no reply. She stepped back half a pace, her hand on the case handle like someone about to leave, or about to enter a meeting. Her lips parted, dropping 2 words onto the stone floor like a promise. "Recorded." The lobby froze for a beat, then erupted. The live stream counter soared past 30,000. From another elevator, the doors opened with a chime, heels clicking swiftly toward them, silver glinting. A voice calm yet sharpened with courtroom force was about to rise, ready to cut a line between standards and law. But that belonged to the next chapter. Here, the prologue ended, with the image of a woman underestimated, standing still in a storm of scandal, holding a pen capable of rewriting the fate of an entire system. And amid the forest of lenses, real power shifted quietly toward her. A cold chime rang from the VIP elevator. The door slid open, and out stepped a figure that froze the entire lobby. Judge Lorraine Parker, 61, tall and slender in a grey wool coat, her silver hair neatly pinned back, her eyes sharp as though they could cut through the thoughts of everyone present. She had witnessed the entire incident from the mezzanine. Now, with thousands of online viewers watching, Lorraine descended like the stroke of fate. "Excuse me." Her voice rang clear, needing no microphone as it carried across the lobby. "I am Federal Judge Parker. I have observed this situation from the very beginning, and I am gravely concerned that what we have here is a blatant civil rights violation. The noise died instantly. Emily froze. Thomas swallowed hard. Veronica jolted, her face drained of color. Nyla merely tilted her head slightly, as though the judge had just confirmed what she had already written in her leather notebook. Livestream captions added by viewers popped up. "OMG, a judge is here. Federal judge? This is the real plot twist." Lorraine stopped at the reception desk, her eyes sweeping over the evidence still in plain sight. The weighty Centurion card, the documents gleaming with embossed seals from the leather case. This woman has presented valid identification, valid payment. Why is the hotel still refusing her service? Veronica tried to keep her tone, even though her throat was parched. "Your Honor, this is merely internal procedure. We have the right to decline guests who do not meet our standards." "Standards of what?" Lorraine cut her off. The words fell like a gavel. Silence. Phones vibrated in their owners' hands as comments flooded. "Yes, what standards?" Thomas stammered. "Ability to pay. Proper conduct." "And what evidence do you have that she cannot pay?" Lorraine's gaze swept the room. "Or are you basing this entirely on skin color and prejudice?" Mick, the burly guard, lowered his hand. Raffi turned his face away, unable to meet the judge's icy stare. Nyla exhaled softly, writing a new line. 11 August 10. Federal judge confirmed potential civil rights violation. At that moment, Nyla's phone vibrated. She answered, switching to speaker. A strong female voice rang out. "This is Alicia Rivera, Chief Legal Officer of Carter Group. Mrs. Carter, we have completed the files and activated Protocol 7. We are awaiting your command." The entire lobby held its breath. Protocol 7. Meaningless words to most, yet resonating like a code for an earthquake. Veronica frowned, skeptical. Protocol what exactly? Nyla lifted her gaze. Her tone remained calm and steady, but her dark eyes glinted with steel. "It means that from this moment on, every action taken here will be treated as legal evidence, and the consequences will be irreversible." The sound of typing fingers rattled across the lobby. People were commenting, shouting, spamming hashtags. The view count spiked to 47,000. National news alerts began flashing. Thomas felt his palms go cold. In his mind, his old disciplinary records resurfaced, red underlined words replaying themselves. 3 complaints, 1 formal warning. But this was different. This was no longer a difficult guest. This was someone who knew the law and had power. Veronica turned to staff. "Security, remove this guest immediately. Otherwise," Lorraine stepped forward, her eyes hard. "I warn you, any forced action at this point will be a blatant violation, and I will sign a summons on the spot." The lobby erupted. Cameras zoomed in on Veronica's trembling face. Emily behind the counter let out a faint sob. Nyla closed her leather notebook. One final line before she shut it. 11:15, Protocol 7 activated. Judge confirmed, media present. Then she raised her head, her voice carrying clearly across every microphone. "You have 30 seconds. After that, the consequences will be beyond repair." The music in the lobby seemed to stop. Every clock ticked toward the woman who had been dragged like a criminal, and now she was the one setting the rules. And everyone understood. This game was no longer in their hands. The second hand on Nyla's Rolex ticked forward, steady and cold. 11:20. Less than 50 minutes remained before the board meeting. The helicopter still waited on the hotel roof, its blades ready to slice the sky. But the meeting was happening here, now. She raised her head. No more note-taking. No more hiding in silence. It was time for the curtain to fall. Nyla slowly opened her leather case, each golden clasp clicking sharply in the hushed air. The entire lobby held its breath. The steps of a server halted mid-stride. Camera lenses zoomed so close they caught the fog of breath on the glass. From inside, Nyla pulled out a black dossier, its edges embossed in gold. Confidential, executive level only. The cover gleamed under the chandelier, flashing across the ceiling like a storm signal. "Before we proceed," she said, her voice low but precise, "let me remind you, every action today has been recorded. Security cameras, live streams, the press. And most importantly, under the witness of a federal judge." Veronica gripped the railing so tightly her nails turned white. Emily wished she could vanish under the desk. Thomas stepped back, throat parched. Nyla opened the first page, holding it up for the cameras to capture. A driver's license, her name carved in bold, her sharp-eyed photograph staring out. She tilted it, light bouncing across the laminate, undeniable. A murmur swept the room. The live stream exploded. "Oh my God, it's her! The ID is real!" But that was only the prelude. She turned to the second page, a steel employee card with the Carter Hospitality Group logo embossed. Beneath the title, Chief Executive Officer, was her face, unmistakable. "No way," Emily whispered, eyes wide. Thomas froze, his head pounding as he recalled an email from March, subject line, "Ownership transition, immediate compliance required." He had ignored it, assuming it was spam. "Perhaps you have not kept up," Nyla said evenly. "The Carter Group completed acquisition of this hotel chain 3 months ago. 89 properties. Annual revenue of $2.1 billion. On March 15th, the contracts were signed. On March 18th, every employee received notification, including mandatory anti-discrimination training. She turned directly to Veronica. "Mrs. Hale, in your inbox right now, there are 17 unread emails, everyone titled Urgent, New Ownership Protocols." You ignored them. Sweat beaded on Veronica's temple. She fumbled for her phone, fingers trembling. The screen confirmed it. A list glowing red with unopened emails. "No, impossible," she whispered. The cameras zoomed in. Online viewers screamed at their screens. "She owns it!" The CEO was humiliated by her own staff. "The reveal!" Nyla stepped forward like a lawyer, cornering her opponent in court. "Mr. Reed," she called, eyes locked on Thomas. "Do you recall the ethics clause in your contract? Section 4.7, discrimination, harassment. What is the penalty?" Thomas stammered. "Immediate termination, no severance." "Correct." Nyla's nod was razor sharp. "This is your 4th violation, in front of thousands of witnesses." Thomas swayed, as though the floor had dropped beneath him. Nyla turned to Emily, the young receptionist, now a trembling shadow behind the marble desk. "Miss Shaw," Nyla said, her tone not loud but resonant like a bell, "you were hired just 6 weeks ago, replacing your predecessor who was dismissed for discriminatory behavior. And yet, in less than 2 months, you repeated it. This is no longer inexperience. This is systemic." Emily burst into tears. I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. Recognition is not the issue," Nyla cut in, her voice like steel. "The issue is, you felt comfortable humiliating anyone you thought unworthy. That is the sickness." The lobby shook. A single clap echoed from the mezzanine, followed by many more. The crowd, silent until now, erupted in support. Judge Lorraine Parker nodded. "Ms. Carter is right. Discrimination is unlawful, regardless of who the victim is, whether an ordinary guest or a CEO. The law makes no distinction." Cameras panned across the room. People were not just watching a CEO defend her own dignity. They were witnessing an entire system laid bare. Nyla's phone buzzed again. She answered on speaker. The voice of Daniel Wu, chairman of the board, thundered through. "Nyla, we are watching live. Do not hold back. The entire board stands with you. Activate the emergency discrimination response package. Do whatever is necessary." "Thank you, Daniel," Nyla replied, then ended the call, all eyes fixed on her. In that moment, the hotel lobby was no longer a reception hall. It had become a courtroom, and Nyla Carter, once dragged like a criminal, now stood as judge, prosecutor, and owner all at once. She looked around. The crowd, reporters, phones, security, judge, staff, all drawn into her orbit. Her voice rang out, the bell that ended the charade. "You believed you had the right to throw me out. But the truth is, I have the right to throw you out of here." The declaration detonated through the space. The live stream surged past 73,000 viewers. Hashtags Carter revealed, justice, in real time, hotel discrimination flooded Twitter. Thomas staggered. Veronica trembled, her phone slipping onto the desk. Emily sobbed, her face drained of color. And Nyla? She simply stood tall, her dark eyes deep, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Not gloating, not angry, just certain. Because she knew the game had changed, and now she was the one writing the rules. The VIP elevator closed behind Nyla, carrying with it a trail of chaos. Veronica, pale as death, Thomas slumped like a broken man, Emily with her head bowed and tear-stained eyes, and 3 guards bewildered, unsure whose side they should stand on. Judge Lorraine Parker moved with slow precision, her eyes sharp as blades, while reporters jostled for space, cameras already mounted. The noise from the lobby was left behind, but the air inside the elevator was so heavy each person could hear the pounding of their own heart. The floor indicator ticked upward. 27, 28, 29. Then the final chime. The doors opened, revealing the penthouse boardroom, the heart of power at the Beverly Crest Grand. The room stretched wide, its floor-to-ceiling glass walls exposing the glittering expanse of Beverly Hills under the midday sun. At the center stood a massive mahogany table, polished to a mirror's gleam, surrounded by leather chairs worth more than a receptionist's monthly salary. Today, those chairs would become the hot seats. Nyla walked straight to the head of the table. She did not sit. She stood tall against the glass wall, the light behind her casting a halo across her shoulders. A gentle touch, and the LED screen on the wall flickered to life, displaying the Carter Hospitality Group logo, along with a flood of charts. "Before we address what happened this morning," Nyla began, her voice deep and resonant, "let us review a few numbers." Large text appeared. Annual revenue, $2.1 billion USD. Net profit margin, 18.4%. Legal reserve fund, $122.7 million USD. Veronica flinched at the last figure. She knew well that fund existed for lawsuits, and today's events would surely be added to it. Nyla's gaze shifted to Thomas. With a click, his personnel file filled the screen. Thomas Reed. 23 years of experience. 3 formal complaints for discrimination. 2 mandatory counseling sessions. 1 written warning. Thomas's jaw dropped. He had never imagined those stains would be projected in public before television cameras. And today, you created a 4th case. This time, in front of tens of thousands of witnesses. The room went silent. Thomas collapsed into his chair, shoulders shaking. Nyla turned to Veronica. A new slide appeared, her unopened inbox, every message marked urgent. Ownership transition. Total, 17. Mrs. Hale. 17 times ignored, 17 warnings left unread, while policy required every manager to implement mandatory diversity training within 30 days. "I didn't," Veronica stammered. "You did not," Nyla cut her off, her tone icy. "And today, the consequences are before us all." Emily gasped when the next slide appeared. Her own hiring record. Emily Shaw, hired 6 weeks ago. Reason for vacancy. Predecessor terminated for discriminatory behavior. A wave of murmurs rippled through the press. Emily burst into tears. "I didn't know, I didn't mean, I just—" "Your mistake was not failing to recognize me," Nyla said, eyes locked, voice striking like a hammer. "Your mistake was believing you had the right to demean anyone who walked up to this desk. If today I were not the owner, but just another guest, you would have treated me the same. That is the true issue." Lorraine Parker gave a solemn nod, her voice carrying the weight of judgment. The federal anti-discrimination statute does not require the victim to be identified by title. The act itself is sufficient for conviction. Camera lenses zoomed on Veronica and Thomas. On the LED screen, new numbers appeared. Potential penalty, $50,000 USD per violation. Federal oversight risk, high. A video call flashed onto the screen. Alicia Rivera, Chief Legal Officer, her face stern. "We have finalized the report. This morning's incident may result in damages between $200,000 and $500,000 USD. Not including additional penalties if the Department of Justice intervenes. These losses stem directly from discriminatory conduct by management and front desk staff. The room fell into near silence, broken only by the clicks of cameras. Nyla closed her case and raised her head. "Ladies and gentlemen, you just turned 15 minutes in the lobby into $500,000 in damages. And more than that, you proved one thing. Our system is rotten." Her eyes swept across the room. "But this is not only about financial loss, this is an opportunity to rewrite the rules. And I will begin here, in this room." The silence that followed was heavy as a gavel strike. Faces bowed, cameras glared. Beyond the glass, the sky stretched a piercing blue, bearing witness to a trial at a height where no one could escape. Nyla Carter, once dragged like a criminal, now presided as chair. And for the first time, the entire system understood. No one here could ever diminish her again. The penthouse boardroom was silent. Only the clicks of cameras and the flash of lights bouncing off the glass ceiling filled the air. Nyla stood at the head of the table, her posture unwavering, sunlight streaming through the glass wall behind her, casting her shadow long across the floor, like the lone pillar holding the entire room from collapse. "What we just witnessed," Nyla began, her voice steady, each word falling like a hammer strike, "is not merely a financial loss, but the exposure of a systemic disease." She pressed the remote. The LED screen shifted to a new slide, bold letters appearing. Immediate action plan. 3 sharp bullet points appeared. 1. Mandatory unconscious bias training. All customer-facing staff must complete within 30 days. Failure to comply equals termination. 2. Carter Welcome app. Guests and employees can anonymously report any discriminatory act. Reports will feed directly into the central legal system. 3. Monthly diversity audits. Conducted by an independent third party, with results published in quarterly reports. "This is not a suggestion," Nyla said firmly. "This is an order." A ripple of unrest moved around the table. Veronica tried to raise her head. "Mrs. Carter, and what about the current managers?" Nyla paused, her dark eyes locking in. "Your future," she said, "depends on your ability to adapt. We will reevaluate every manager based on 3 metrics: diversity, inclusion, and guest satisfaction. Anyone who does not meet the standard will be replaced." The words cut like shears through a noose. Thomas swayed, his face ashen. He stammered, I know I was wrong. I am willing to relearn. I can improve." Nyla turned to him, her voice heavy with judgment rather than anger. "Mr. Reed, this is your 4th time. How many guests must be humiliated before you change? How many more people need to become your lesson?" The cameras zoomed in. Sweat trickled down Thomas's face. He dropped his head, speechless. Emily sobbed softly, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean it. I just thought I was only following how things have always been done. Please, just give me one more chance." Nyla's gaze softened slightly as she looked at the young woman. "A chance will come in a different way," she said. "You will leave this position immediately. But the Carter Foundation will cover the full tuition for a customer service and cultural sensitivity program. If you complete it, if you truly change, you can begin again." Emily broke down in tears. In that cold boardroom, Nyla's decision was not just punishment, it was a reckoning. Nyla returned to the head of the table and continued, "We are not patching cracks. We are rebuilding the foundation. From today, every branch, every employee will understand this. Respect is not optional. It is the standard for survival." Judge Lorraine Parker gave a small nod, her voice resonant like a verdict. "This is not just crisis management. This is the reshaping of an entire industry." At the end of the table, a reporter raised a hand. "Mrs. Carter, do you think this plan will cause resistance among staff?" Nyla looked directly into the camera lens, speaking so that tens of thousands on the live stream could hear. "I do not care about resistance. I care about results. If someone refuses to change, they will leave. If someone is willing to learn, they will grow with us. And if this system wants to survive, it must choose fairness as its foundation." The LED screen displayed the final slide. Deadline, 24 hours. All managers must decide, join the solution or leave the system. Nyla lowered the remote, her voice closing like a steel door. The door to the future has opened. Whoever wants to step through, stand up. Whoever does not has already chosen their fate. Silence. The entire room sank into a moment of decision, and everyone understood. The rules had changed. Dawn cast a pale golden glow over the glass facade of the Beverly Crest Grand. But inside the ground floor conference hall, the atmosphere was the complete opposite. Tense, compressed, as though awaiting a final verdict. All managers, reception staff, and security personnel were present. Outside, dozens of reporters had set up their cameras. The live stream had not ended since the night before, and across social media, the hashtag #CarterJustice still held the #1 spot. Nyla Carter entered. Today she wore a black suit trimmed with sharp white edges, no elaborate jewelry. Only her deep black eyes, calm yet fierce, silenced the entire hall. She stood in the center of the room, with no podium, no chair of authority. Her voice carried evenly, without a microphone. Today we close one chapter, and we open another. The room shivered. Nyla opened her dossier and read aloud, "Veronica Hale, General Manager. You ignored 17 mandatory emails, dismissed every directive from the new executive board, and allowed a grave violation to occur. You submitted your resignation this morning at 6 o'clock, along with a public letter of apology. This decision has been accepted." Murmurs stirred. Veronica sat in the front row, her face pale, her eyes hollow. She rose, bowed slightly, then slipped out quietly, avoiding the cameras. Nyla continued. Thomas Reed, Assistant Manager. Your record shows 3 prior violations. Yesterday was the 4th. Section 4.7 of your contract states clearly, discrimination equals immediate termination, with no severance, no benefits. Effective immediately. Thomas seemed drained of life. His chair creaked beneath him, but he had no strength to stand. 2 HR staff approached, placing an envelope on his desk. He buried his face, then dragged himself toward the exit like a shadow. The door shut behind him, severing 23 years of career. Nyla's expression did not change. She turned the page. Emily Shaw, receptionist. Your actions violated the standards of service, but I believe mistakes of the young deserve a chance to be corrected. Your contract is terminated immediately. However, the Carter Foundation will cover full tuition for you to attend customer service and cultural sensitivity training at Westwood Community College. If you complete the program, you may reapply. Emily burst into tears, but this time within her sobs was a glimmer of hope. She rose, bowed slightly to Nyla, and said, "Thank you, I will not waste this chance." Scattered applause broke out across the hall. Nyla turned to the 3 security guards, Mick, Raffi, and Johnson. You followed wrongful orders, but you did not cross the line. However, your reckless conduct could have escalated into violence. The 3 of you will receive formal reprimands, attend mandatory retraining, and remain under supervision for 6 months. If you pass, your records will be cleared. Raffi nodded firmly, eyes wet. I understand. I will change. The air began to ease. But Nyla was not finished. She turned to address the entire staff, her gaze sweeping across the room. Yesterday could have destroyed many careers, but instead of letting it become a stain, I want to make it a catalyst. From this day forward, every employee of Carter Hospitality will be an ambassador of fairness. The Carter Welcome app has been downloaded 50,000 times in just 24 hours. Guests are watching us. The entire industry is watching us. And we will prove that fairness is not only right, it is a competitive advantage. A wave of applause erupted. From the back row, a man stood, Dr. Leonard Brooks, civil rights attorney. His voice resonated, solemn and deep. What we see here today is not merely termination or discipline. This is a model for reform. If implemented widely, it could transform the service industry. Cameras zoomed in on Nyla's face. She did not smile, but her voice carried the weight of a promise. Yes, this is the beginning. And I will not stop until fairness becomes the default standard, no longer a slogan. Again, applause thundered through the hall. The entire room seemed pulled out of darkness, drawn toward a new light. And from that moment on, everyone understood. The Beverly Crest Grand, once a symbol of arrogant luxury, had become the starting point of a revolution in hospitality. The news erupted like a storm after a night of thunder. By the next morning, the front pages of every major newspaper carried headlines: CEO thrown out of her own hotel, and how she struck back. Nyla Carter, from humiliation to symbol of justice in hospitality. Television networks ran the live stream footage of the lobby incident and the dramatic unmasking in the boardroom on repeat. More than 3 million shares flooded social media. The hashtag Carter Justice stayed at the top of global trends for 48 hours. On CNN, a commentator exclaimed, "We just witnessed a rare moment where true power not only turned the tables, but reset the rules of an entire industry." In a conference hall in New York, Marriott's leadership convened an emergency meeting. Screens streamed relentless news coverage, Nyla Carter's name appearing everywhere. One executive sighed, "If we do not act, customers will compare us to Carter hospitality, and we will lose in the court of public opinion." Hilton, Hyatt, Intercontinental, all were forced to summon urgent meetings. An entire industry had been dragged into the whirlwind by one woman humiliated in the lobby of her own hotel. Meanwhile, at the Beverly Crest Grand, the ripple effect was immediate. The Carter Welcome app, freshly launched, surpassed 200,000 downloads in just 72 hours. Customers were not only using it to report incidents, but also to send gratitude. One comment from a guest in Texas read, "For the first time, I feel my voice in a hotel will truly be heard." This is no longer just service. This is justice. The marketing team released figures. Bookings surged 37% in a single week. Guests were deliberately choosing Carter hospitality because they wanted to support the place that dared to stand on the side of justice. The story did not stop with hotels. Major restaurant chains, airlines, even tech companies began paying attention. Many corporations sent invitations for Nyla to speak at conferences on fairness and competitive advantage. In Washington, a congressional hearing on corporate responsibility expanded. A senator declared, "Carter hospitality has proven that fighting discrimination is not only a moral duty, it is profitable. This must become the standard for all businesses." In her private office atop the tower, Nyla stood gazing over the city bathed in the afternoon light. In her hands, she held the latest report. Incidents of discrimination across the Carter system had dropped 94% in just 6 months. Internal staff had sent hundreds of thank you emails saying, "For the first time, we feel protected." Vivian, her loyal assistant, entered with another file. Harvard Business School has officially requested to use Carter hospitality as a mandatory case study in the Global Leadership Program. Nyla smiled faintly, not a triumphant smile, but the smile of someone who saw the road ahead. Long, difficult, but with the first door already flung wide open. In a live national interview, when asked what kept her so resolute, Nyla answered simply, "Because I know justice never happens by itself. It must be designed, it must be defended, and it must be enforced as a system." Audiences across the country erupted in applause. Comments poured in. "Yes, justice must be the standard. I will choose Carter hotels for my next trip." At the Beverly Crest Grand, the atmosphere had changed. Staff moved with steadier eyes, their smiles more genuine. On the great wall of the lobby, a new inscription had been mounted, glowing beneath the crystal lights. "Dignity is non-negotiable." And everyone understood. The story that began with humiliation ended with a declaration powerful enough to transform an entire industry. 6 months after the upheaval at the Beverly Crest Grand, the name Carter Hospitality was no longer confined to the hotel industry. It had become a symbol, a global reference model for business itself. In the Grand Hall of Washington, D.C., camera lights illuminated every face. On stage, Nyla Carter stood alongside representatives of the NAACP and the Southern Poverty Law Center. Behind them hung a massive banner, Corporate Accountability Summit. Nyla stepped to the podium, her voice resonant yet never raised. "That day, in a hotel lobby, I was treated as someone unworthy. But from that moment, we built a new system, where fairness is no longer a privilege, but a matter of survival." The entire hall erupted in applause. And not only this hall. Across the world, major corporations had begun to emulate the Carter model. Marriott announced mandatory bias training for 200,000 employees globally. Hilton launched a customer feedback app modeled after Carter Welcome. Hyatt signed a public partnership with the Civil Rights Alliance for quarterly diversity audits. An editorial in Harvard Business Review declared, "What Carter achieved is not merely internal reform. They transformed fairness into a competitive strategy, forcing an entire industry to change." In a high-rise office in New York, Carter Group's legal team received an unexpected call from the U.S. Department of Justice. Instead of announcing an investigation, they stated, "We will use Carter Hospitality as the voluntary compliance model, a recommendation for other service corporations." A press release that followed shook the market. Carter stock soaring 18% in just 2 weeks. At the same time, the Williams Foundation, a charity founded by Nyla, announced a $5 million grant to develop the Hospitality Without Bias program in business schools and hospitality schools across the United States. In the first class at Howard University, a student raised a hand. "Ms. Carter, does fairness really pay?" Nyla smiled. "Look at the numbers. Where employees feel respected, customers stay loyal. Revenue at Carter Hotels rose 23% in just 6 months. Fairness is not a cost. It is the highest return investment." Beyond America's borders, Nyla accepted an invitation to speak at the United Nations. In the International Assembly Hall, she opened with the words that had become a rallying cry. True power is not about crushing opposition. It is about building systems where opposition becomes unnecessary. Delegates from across nations rose to their feet in applause. A historic moment. From an act of humiliation in a hotel lobby, the message had echoed all the way to the United Nations. That evening, in her private, high-rise office, Vivian, her loyal assistant, placed a new report on Nyla's desk. Latest news: 3 retail giants, 2 airlines, and a global restaurant chain have reached out. They want to implement the Carter Protocol in their own systems. Nyla sat quietly, her hand gliding across the folder's cover. Her eyes looked out through the glass at the glowing city night. A deep truth resonated within her. A storm begins with a single drop. And today, from one hotel lobby, a storm of justice had swept across the world. At the Beverly Crest Grand, where it all began, the lobby wall now bore a new inscription in gleaming steel. Dignity is non-negotiable. And anyone who stepped through those doors, whether guest, staff, or manager, understood. The rules had changed, and this time they would spread across the globe. The latest quarterly report glowed across the central boardroom screen. Carter Hospitality's regional directors sat in a circle, eyes fixed on the numbers climbing before them. Revenue, up 23%. Return guest rate, highest in the industry. Discrimination incidents, down 94%. One young director could not hold back and whispered, "We are leading the entire industry." Nyla Carter sat at the head of the table, her face calm, her eyes still shining with conviction. "Not leading only in profit," she said, "but leading in the standard of human dignity." At the Beverly Crest Grand, once a stain, the atmosphere had completely transformed. At the reception desk, new employees bowed to guests with genuine smiles. Guests checking out left comments. I was greeted by name. I was listened to. I was not judged by appearances. The Carter Welcome app continued to ping daily, but most were no longer complaints. They were positive feedback. One guest wrote, "Thank you for addressing my issue immediately. I will return." Inside the company, staff culture had shifted dramatically. A group of security guards, including Rafi, completed retraining. On the day of certification, he stood before the team, his voice trembling but firm. "I have learned to see people as human beings first, not as suspects. And I know only when guests feel safe are we truly doing our job." The room burst into applause. Nyla, seated quietly in the back row, smiled, her eyes filled with pride. But most importantly, the benefits were shared. The profit-sharing D&I program, tying diversity and inclusion scores to employee bonuses, was launched. When hotels improved satisfaction scores from marginalized guests, every employee received extra pay. In its first month, the Beverly Crest Grand exceeded the target by 18%. Every worker, from housekeeping to management, received a bonus larger than any they had ever seen. An elderly housekeeper held her envelope, tears brimming. "For the first time in 20 years of work, I feel seen." Investors who once doubted now had to concede. Carter hospitality stock continued to climb. A financial news anchor remarked, "They have turned fairness into market capitalization, a business lesson no classroom teaches." On Wall Street, an analyst stated bluntly on live television, "Investing in Carter hospitality now is not just investing in hotels. It is investing in a social standard that is winning." At a press conference, a reporter asked Nyla, "Do you feel proud to achieve record profits while reducing discrimination?" Nyla answered simply, her eyes profound. "Profit only proves that fairness is not a burden. It is the formula for sustainable prosperity." The reply spread like a new slogan. At the end of the day, Nyla stood alone on the rooftop of the Beverly Crest Grand. The city blazed beneath her feet. The wind carried the scent of Los Angeles night through her hair. Vivian, her loyal assistant, approached, handing her an iPad. "Look at this." An article in Harvard Business Review. "Carter Model, the blueprint of corporate justice." They are officially calling your approach the Carter Model. Nyla glanced at the screen and gave a faint nod. Within her was no fleeting pride, but a steady calm, because she knew this was only the beginning of a new culture, where fairness and profit no longer stand opposed, but rise together to the summit. 6 months later, the lecture hall at Harvard Business School was filled to the brim with students, professors, and business leaders from around the world. The large board behind the stage read, "Case Study Special Lecture, the Carter Model." Nyla Carter stepped up to the podium, dressed in a crisp white suit, her face without elaborate makeup, but glowing with confidence and lived experience. She waited until the applause faded before beginning. True power is not in crushing opponents. It is in designing systems where discrimination cannot exist. The hall fell silent. Students scribbled furiously. Professors nodded in agreement. Some streamed the moment live to thousands watching online. After her lecture, Harvard announced that the Carter Model would be included as a mandatory case study in the global leadership curriculum. Harvard Business Review released a special edition featuring Nyla's methods in full, from the Carter Welcome app to diversity audits, from profit sharing tied to fairness metrics to unconscious bias training. Business schools in London, Tokyo, and Paris simultaneously integrated it into their programs. In Geneva, Nyla addressed the United Nations. The International Chamber glowed with the flags of nations. Her voice was steady and solemn. "We do not eliminate discrimination through revenge. We eliminate it by tying the existence of fairness to the success of business. When fairness becomes a matter of survival, no one can ignore it." The entire hall rose in a standing ovation. In Washington, senators cited Carter hospitality during a congressional hearing. Carter has proven that a rigorously enforced anti-discrimination system not only improves social ethics, but drives sustainable profit. This is a model other industries must adopt. Another senator added, "If the hotel industry can do it, then so must airlines, retail and public service." Within Carter Hospitality itself, results exceeded all expectations. Discrimination incidents down 94% system-wide. Employee satisfaction at record highs with turnover reduced by 45%. The D&I profit-sharing fund distributing more than $2 million to employees in just 6 months. Carter stock continuing to rise past historic market capitalization. A housekeeper shared on live television, "For the first time in my life, I see my work tied to dignity, and I am rewarded fairly. I am proud to be part of Carter." Nyla refused lavish villas and the glamour the press chased her with. Instead, she devoted her time to the Williams Foundation, which had expanded its grants to fund bias training for the retail, airline, and technology sectors. When asked by a reporter, "What drives you to keep going, even after such success?" Nyla replied simply, "Because every day, someone is still denied for their appearance, their skin color, or their background. And I know that if one story changes, thousands more will find courage." 1 year after the incident at the Beverly Crest Grand, the very same place became the International Center for a Conference on Fairness in Service. On the lobby wall, beneath crystal chandeliers, new steel letters gleamed. "Dignity is non-negotiable." Guests from around the world paused to read, to take photos, to share. The hashtag Carter model continued to spread. On the final evening of the conference, Nyla stood alone before the inscription. The light reflected in her eyes, triggering memories. The sound of her heels dragged across a marble, the scornful look of a receptionist, the mocking words, "Fake cards are everywhere now." She smiled faintly. Not from victory, but from knowing that storm had become a wind of change. And in silence, she told herself, "This is only the beginning. A system has been built, and it will stand long after I am gone." From a hotel lobby glittering with crystal lights, where a woman was dragged as if she were a criminal, the world witnessed a simple truth. Real power does not lie in appearances, but in the ability to turn humiliation into change. Nyla Carter proved that sometimes a single moment of disgrace can become the spark for an entire revolution. From what seemed like a small incident, the entire hotel industry, and then many others, was forced to rewrite its standards. The message was simple, yet resounding. Dignity cannot be bought, cannot be bargained, and no one has the right to take it away. If you have ever been underestimated, ever been rejected because of your background, remember this: you are not merely a victim. You may be the beginning of the change the world has been waiting for. And when fairness becomes a system, no one will ever have to stand alone in a hotel lobby under the cold gaze of prejudice. Because in the end, the world is not measured by the profits a business generates, but by how we protect the dignity of every single human being.